Welcome to the Crush It in Sales podcast. I'm your host, Melinda Van Fleet. This podcast focuses on the intersection of sales, leadership, and personal development. Now let's get ready to dig in and crush it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Crush It in Sales podcast. This week, I am super excited to have a longtime friend and industry expert on my podcast, and that is Kristin Anderson. She is the VP of U.S. Sales for both Smith & Sinclair and also Pollen. And the reason why I wanted to have her on this podcast is not only is she starting up these two really cool industry-leading brands, but also she has a ton of insight on getting brands built and hustling and taking businesses to the next level. So welcome, Kristin. Thanks for being on my show.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here, and just like a huge fan of yours, Melinda, and seeing your career kind of transform and blossom and find your way into this like new adventure for you.
Awesome.
So excited to be part of it.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to have you. So this is awesome. Do you want to start out? Because like I said, both brands are new to the US, and I think it would be really cool to just kind of give a little insight.
Yeah, definitely. So this past year, I have transitioned to a new career, and I came across this company sort of in the last year called Smith & Sinclair, and they had been in business for about 5 years in London, and really an amazing creator and innovator in the food and drink space. And what had made them kind of exciting in what they do is they created the world's first alcohol gummy. And there has really been nothing like that in the world, nor in the US. And I just found that really interesting. And they were bringing that to the US market. And I thought it was a really great opportunity to kind of join in on this company and the creativity and innovation that they have. So they just set up a US office recently this summer, and I'm leading the sales for the company in the US. And with that then also came an additional new brand that the company launched called Pollen, which is a CBD brand, mainly in gummies, but also a drink. And really also taking kind of notes from what we've been doing in Smith & Sinclair in Europe as being an innovator and creator in a brand new, exciting category.
Wow. And unless you've been living under a rock, you know that CBD is probably, I would say, the hottest category right now.
Yes. Up until last year, I think I was living under a rock. And now that I'm part of this, it's like fasten your seatbelts.
It's really nuts. Even in the Keys, we have CBD shops, and I feel like we're like the last people on the planet to have anything down here. So it's really cool.
It's really interesting because I can't think of too many categories, at least at the top of my head, that it is something that everyone's learning together. The retailer is learning, the consumer is learning, the manufacturers are learning. So every day is kind of like we're all in it together, trying to figure out what this opportunity is and how to, provide education and guidelines around it. So it's really exciting to be a part of, because it's not like you're going into this like stale existing business or category that people already have, an idea and impression about what it's about.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point, because you're right. It's rocking and rolling so fast with, from like 0 to 360. Like, how have you been handling that in terms of, using your network or learning and just trying to get this going?
Yeah, it's a lot of learning, and you get a lot of misinformation, I think. And it's, if anyone's been kind of paying attention, is that the FDA has not really provided guidelines yet on what the ruling, I guess, or the labeling requirements are going to be for manufacturers. There's also still not it's still not legal in every state. So it's a day by day learning process, and also trying to keep up to date on any new regulations, what the states are doing, and trying to keep up to date on that. Luckily, we are part of we have a parent company that is in the cannabis space. So they really provide a lot of that information to us on a daily and weekly basis, so that everyone in the company can kind of, keep abreast on what is happening in the industry.
Wow. And when you got the job, I mean, truly, there's nothing here in the US. So how did you start to kind of get your arms around that and start to kind of move forward? And
yeah, so I'll start because it's really around Smith and Sinclair, because that's really what brought me to the company originally. I have spent the last 15 years of my career in the confectionery space. So I knew the category really well, and I knew what they had in the UK and what they were bringing to the US was really original, and also just had this amazing packaging and sort of marketing platform that I felt really strongly about, and knew from what I'd seen that there was kind of really nothing like it in the US. And that was really exciting to me. And I think, I know, a lot of people talk about passion, but I think also in sales, your job is so much easier when you love the product and you believe in the product. It kind of all comes together, especially too when you know that there's kind of nothing like it in the marketplace, and you have a really unique offering that, the consumers definitely want. So I kind of knew from my own, kind of experience in the industry that who the right retailers would be. And the way, I kind of went about it, and the way that our company sort of goes about it is we make a master list. It's a pretty large list of every retailer and every channel that we could possibly want to do business with. But we break it down to sort of a top 10 matrix. And it's much easier that way to focus on who you think these top 10 retailers that you would strive to be in as your main focus. And then you kind of have your 10 after that and your 10 after that. But once you sort of get one of those accounts, you take one off, the next off, basically the next 10, and put it back on your list. So you're always still constantly making it a smaller focus for yourself. And that's kind of how I started. And I think, too, like LinkedIn is your friend. So if I didn't have a contact, I use LinkedIn in a pretty aggressive way to figure out how, through my own network, I could possibly get to some of those contacts that I needed at these retailers.
Right. And was that like an eye-opening experience where you're like, oh my gosh, the world is really kind of small?
It really is. I think because I had been at the last job for, over 10 years, almost 15 years, that I was definitely making connections on LinkedIn, but I didn't really realize how powerful of a tool that was for me, especially sort of being new to sales as I went, started embarking on this new task. And when you started looking at your connections, it was like you're pretty much 2 to 3 people removed from kind of everybody you want to get to. At least for me, I've been finding that. And that definitely was eye-opening, and realizing how maybe then I even need to use LinkedIn as better than what I had been, not just like sort of accepting requests to be, part of your community, but really, start maybe sharing articles or sharing, tidbits of information about, your company and things that you're doing. So it's been great. And I still think there's a lot of learning around it too, for me.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And I feel that way. It's actually on my to-do list. I have a nice quiet weekend ahead, and I do feel like I underutilize LinkedIn, and there's a lot of possibilities out there. So,
and I think like anything, it's like carving out time. Like it's like, I think you do a lot of that, and, trying to segment and prioritize your day. But I think someone in sales, or, even as you're starting a new business or startup, like it is carving a little bit of time out to make sure, your profile is up to date, but also just networking within your LinkedIn community.
Yeah. And keeping in touch with people too. So it's not like 5 years later, you're like, oh,
True.
hi. I think that's a big thing. And, something I strive to do, or at least with some people I'm probably pretty good at. And then some people I'd like to be better at, let's put it that way. In terms of just keeping in touch, just like on a friendly basis
Yeah. And that's a good point. Cause I think even too, it's kind of simple and easy to do, because it could be, you get those notifications that it's like, 10-year anniversary,
yeah.
or, maybe you just look up an old colleague and you can easily comment like, oh my gosh, it's so, so exciting that you're still there 10 years. Like, how you doing? Or I see that you were recently promoted. It's an easy tool to be able to make a small comment and start a dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. It's a really cool tool. It's funny. You and I were chatting about some of the different things you've had to do in terms of this being just really entrepreneurial and rolling your sleeves up. And I was watching Masterclass. Do you know what Masterclass is?
Yeah, I've seen, I haven't done it. I haven't watched it, but that ad keeps popping up on my Instagram and I want to tune in.
Yeah, now it's probably going to pop up more. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
So I think the whole retail industry probably, or at least a good majority, signed up when Anna Wintour, when her masterclass was released, and just a week or so ago was Sarah Blakely. Mm-hmm. And it was Sarah Blakely's was over the top amazing. So was Anna's, but Sarah's, I really picked up on a lot of really good nuggets. And one of her nuggets that I'm relating to you is Sarah talked about, for years she would go and, be in Neiman's and really be on the floor selling her product and looking at how it's displayed. And she put it at different cash wraps and then eventually got her hand slapped. But, share some of the things that you've been doing to kind of get the brand out there. I know you've been on the street as well a little bit.
Definitely. I have a recent example. There's a small boutique in my area, and she was definitely hesitant at first, but we had sort of a common friend. So, she sort of gave me a small order, I think is maybe a little bit of a favor. And I know that a lot of boutiques in areas do VIP shopping nights before the holidays. So I definitely asked, I was like, are you doing any shopping nights? And she was, and I was like, I would love to come. I'd bring some samples and I'd like to be able to talk about the product. And she was like, yeah, great. And when I walked into the store that night, I came early, I came with a lot of samples, and she had 3 boxes out of my product, and it wasn't a great presentation. And she's like, okay, well, we'll go out to the back and get the rest of it. And in total, she had 24 units. And she's a small store, so I get that she can't put all maybe 24 units out, but I was kind of expecting more than 3. And so I unpacked all 24 units and put them all on the table. And she made a comment that, yeah, you probably maybe want to save the boxes. I'm not sure you're going to sell that many. Yeah. Within 1 hour, I sold more than half of her inventory.
Oh, rocket.
And she told me she's writing me a reorder. And nice. I know. And you know what? It wasn't a big deal. I mean, yeah, it was a couple hours out of my evening. But I think it was a really useful too to see for her sales team to sort of see how I sell and interact with the customer, and maybe take some of those learnings, also on how they can engage and sell. And, once one customer bought one, it was sort of another customer came over, was curious, and then, they bought 4. And I think that was just okay, I reached out to everything that was sort of within driving distance for me that I've sold to. And it's what, do you have a VIP shopping night? I'd be happy to come, bring some samples. And I do have a few more that I'm doing this month. And that's an easy way to sort of, also show your dedication to the brand, I think to the store, that you're willing to work hard, even if it's a small account. And, from that, I've already, to be able to get another reorder before the holiday time, is exactly what I was hoping for. And then hopefully, they're going to take enough away from my interaction with the consumer to like be able to sell on their own more successfully.
Yeah, no, that's such a cool story. And number one, I think it just goes to show a lot of your integrity and work ethic. And, I'm just going to call this out. Kristin's not like a 21-year-old right out of school. Like she is.
Oh, come on. I'm close though.
I'm the same boat. We're the same age. But my point is, it wasn't below her to do that. I think that is great. And you learn so much and you're helping the brand and it'll grow from there. And just the energy behind that, the positive energy and the mindset is just, above and beyond what words can even say. And I remember when I was at Victoria's Secret, which was a long time ago, we had to do tests all the time. Everything was tested, 30 store tests, 10 store tests. I think there was almost 1,000 stores at that time when I worked for the brand. And then we had to fly to the stores to make sure the tests were executed properly. And, 9 times out of 10, the stuff was still in the back room. So you trust that this retailer is going to do this great job for your brand and put stuff on the floor and really know how to sell it. And, often they don't. So having that extra little, care and, wanting it to succeed really can go miles for building a brand, especially. So
yeah, definitely. And then, I was also thinking too, especially with a startup or a new company, you kind of tend to maybe drink your own Kool-Aid. I mean, you like your product, you become really passionate about it, but those opportunities too, to get out to some of your accounts and your stores and actually listen to feedback or talk to the managers and hear their feedback is really useful to kind of take back to your team, your marketing team, your operations team, to share some of that feedback, good or bad, because you are constantly still learning and growing and updating your packaging and maybe changing a formula or, it's a process and you definitely kind of need that feedback. It's crucial.
Yeah, I think you're reading my mind because that's exactly what I was thinking is the feedback is priceless. And unfortunately, you're right. So many people, to use your words, drink their own Kool-Aid and they think that their product is great and everyone should just love it. But if they just took a little bit of time to learn and make some tweaks or pivots, like they could definitely, even if they are currently successful, let's say, it can help in their longevity and even make them more successful currently. So
yeah, definitely.
Super, super important. So what other strategies are you working on? You've got 2020 ahead of you. I think this is going to explode. You're going to be really busy.
Yeah.
You checked your stores off your list already, which is amazing. So you've got
we've had some really great successes, and I think it kind of builds like this drive inside of you, and also makes it a little easier too when you have a couple great wins to be able to share those wins with some prospective, contacts that you want or retailers that you're trying to get into. That's made it definitely, a little bit easier. So we are going to a few trade shows next year, which is new for me. I've never actually worked in a trade show booth before. I've always been on the other side. So I'm a little nervous about that, but I'm ready and really excited about the learning and growth that's going to happen from presenting our line at these shows. And definitely a little bit nervous too, because I know we have a really great product, and based on some of the retailers that we were able to get into, I think we're going to have a lot more visibility after the holiday as we go into these shows that people are like, oh, wow, I've seen that in a few places. So I'm excited. And that is kind of going to be kicking off, I think, the year for 2020, as well as a lot of new product development that we have coming and trying to already from, I guess, the feedback that we've gotten from some retailers with our current assortment, what they would like to see in 2020. So we're really trying to push that along and get that ready for these trade shows.
Awesome. I just think, especially Smith and Sinclair is just fun. I don't know as much about Pollen, to be honest, but Just a really, really fun line. What are some of the retailers that you're in right now if someone wanted to go out and try the product?
Yeah, so we launched with Neiman Marcus in about their top 25 doors, as well as online. And for those who don't know, Neiman's also manages Bergdorf Goodman's website. So we're also on Bergdorf Goodman, which is exciting. And we also kicked off with Paper Source, which they've always been a favorite retailer of mine. I think they merchandise really well. And they had put a couple items in their entire chain, and then selected a few for about 60% of their doors. And really excited about that. And then most of the other things have been some small, regional accounts. We started really late. So my focus was really try to have a couple really big wins and then do some things locally to the best that I can.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, when you started and then we were talking about, just you had to also get the product made. I was like, and that you had big goals for 2019. I was like, wow, like I knew you would figure it out, but I also knew it was lofty. So that is congratulations.
Yeah. Well, I think you and I've talked about this too. And I've learned it definitely, I think, from working with this, which is even though we've been in business in the UK for 5 years, it's still very much a startup in the US. And it is, you have to start before you're ready. And we definitely did that. And maybe behind the scenes, not everyone really knows maybe some of the chaos that's happening to get the goods into the country, to get, your warehouse set up, to get, sort of your ducks in a row. It was, you have to start somewhere. And I think starting maybe a little earlier than maybe I would have liked to, it was good because we did have time to get some feedback with these key retailers, what they would looking for, and be able to kind of prepare and scramble really to get the goods here and ready to ship.
Well, I know you've got a full agenda, Kristin, a full day of calls and sales calls. So before we wrap up, number one, would love for you to share, just 3 tips that you would give to any startup business, any startup sales rep that you have found to be really helpful as you've started this venture with Smith & Sinclair and Pollen.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I learned is you definitely need to kind of perfect your sales pitch. And what I mean by that is you need to make it exciting to open up that email and open up that box. And I've been on the receiving end of so many emails and packages, and which ones you open and don't open, even personally, which ones you open and don't open, that you're not that excited about. And we tag our emails as the subject line is meet Smith & Sinclair, make adult more fun. Mm-hmm. And my response rate is pretty positive with that subject line.
Yeah. Like, what is this? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you have to think about it, whatever your product is and whatever you're trying to sell, like, try to make it fun and interesting for the person opening up, that they want to open it up and that makes them curious to open it up. I think I learned a lot about that. And then also like our mailing too is really fun. We ship in a colorful box with, colorful tissue and, personalized note. And I think that too, I did a bunch of like cold call mailings recently. And my response rate was also pretty positive with that, because when you see your stack of brown boxes in your office and you're getting one that's like purple,
yeah,
it's worth that extra money. I think sometimes, especially for those key retailers that you're trying to get into, to make that package super exciting to open up those samples. So that's my tip number 1, is perfecting your sales pitch with your email and also your mailing. I think number 2 would be start before you're ready, and especially in a startup mode. And you're never going to be able to have that perfect sales deck and that perfect maybe product image, especially if you don't have production yet. And I would think you've got to start getting out there as early as you can, even if you're not quite ready, to start, especially with your own contacts and the network of retailers that you maybe already have a connection to, and start getting some feedback, and then being transparent with them too, kind of about where you are in the process, and, that you really want them to be kind of a partner, in your launch or in this product launch, and work with them on getting it right. And so definitely start before you're ready would be my tip number 2. And I think number 3 too, and I know this because, you and I both have been buyers in our past life, and now are in sales, but it could be like an oversight, but I think it's something to kind of pay attention to, is like, you need to treat your customers as like you want to be treated. And I think about me on the receiving end in my past life, and who I responded to, and emails and tones of emails and conversations that I had. And I kind of keep a conscious note to myself, in my dialogue and in my emails of how would I respond, if this person was making a sales pitch to me, and what do I say, and also just like having to try to keep a personal touch to everything. Nothing has to be so hardcore business. There could be like friendly, conversation, getting to know people on a personal level. I think also just kind of goes a long way. And that kind of goes with treating your customers as you want to be treated. Not everything has to be so cut and dry, black and white. There can be some elements of personal connection with each contact.
Oh, all your tips are amazing. I love the purple box. I would like a purple box. Because I'd love to get mail. I'm like, purple box. I would open that with like a heartbeat if I were a buyer, especially too. So, but you're right. And I remember when I was a buyer and I wanted to get into sales, and I was putting it out there to make that transition. And that was one of the key things, is that I knew I could do it because I saw and learned from great sales reps and not so great sales reps. Mm-hmm. So you're right. And I took that with me. I took that with me when I was interviewing for a job to get into sales. It was that, I've been a buyer for 16 years. I've pretty much dealt with lots and lots and lots.
Right. You've made a lot of mental notes of what to do and not to do.
Exactly. So, and I think some people lose sight of that, and they even lose sight of it from a sales perspective. If they've only ever been a sales rep, they don't think, how am I being perceived? So I think that's a good tip, like both ends of the spectrum.
Definitely.
So, yeah. Well, I want to just ask you some fun questions before we totally wrap this up.
Are you sure they're fun?
Well, yeah, I guess that is left for a subject.
You can ask.
You're totally right there. Yeah. It's not fun. You might be like calling me later going, that was not fun.
All right. I'm ready.
All right. Hold on to your seat. This year, I am proud that I
am proud that I took the leap into a new career, having been in sort of the same industry, doing the same thing for many years. It's a big transition for me. It's a little scary, but I'm really proud that I did it, and then I'm continuing, I think, to learn and grow.
That's awesome. And next year, I plan to
kick it in sales. Exceed all sales expectations.
Yes, Kristin's gonna crush it.
Well, and maybe not get any gray hair along the way. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And I was gonna say, you were like nervous. I'm like, the only thing you've got to be nervous about is how are you going to handle those lines of crowds around your booth at the trade show? Like that's.
I am a little nervous. I mean, I can't lie. I'm definitely a little nervous about it. But no, I'm definitely super excited about like a full year and a lot of learning just in the last 6 months, and just really to get going on both of these brands, and seeing what I can do.
That's awesome. And how should anyone reach out to you or pull up the brand and find where they can buy Pollen or Smith and Sinclair, obviously besides Neiman's and paper stores? How would you recommend?
Yeah,
that?
definitely. We have both of our websites are up and running in the US. You can find us at smithandsinclair.com, and it's the and is spelled out, or our CBD website is with Pollen.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the Crush It in Sales podcast. And I just think the world is your oyster with all of this. And I'm just so excited for you. So congratulations. And I look forward to trying some candy soon. That's awesome.
I know, right? Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.